Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being patient with us as we get all the logistics worked out. It's Worthy Wage Day today. This is also known as International Workers' Day, May Day, and we are here to take the opportunity to pay respect to this movement and to celebrate all of those in the fight for worthy wages that enable them to live their lives for their families and for their futures. Too many early educators are not making enough to make ends meet, to provide for their families, or to save for retirement. Until this field earns the dignified wages they deserve, we will continue the fight for worthy wages. To kick off this discussion, we're going to play a very short video for you that shares some of the significant points in time for childcare advocacy here in Wisconsin. Kaylin, did you lose your sound?
Yes.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah, none of us heard it.
I heard it.
You heard it?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can
And
hear
I
you now,
can hear
Caitlin.
Kaylin.
But we couldn't hear the audio on the
It
video.
was just music, so we're not missing much
Oh.
anyway.
Kaylin, did you choose your,
I just
uh,
did. I couldn't
okay,
choose it when I was sharing my screen, so that was my
okay.
fault here. Okay, now we will get back to, here we go. It was just music. We just wanted to see the pictures anyways, so.
It wasn't very good music.
Okay, just some background here about Worthy Wage Day. The purpose was to have avocation for economic justice for those caring for our youngest children. And some of the key issues that were covered were poverty level wages, as we all know, and then underfunding of the ECE programs. This began in 1992 for teacher activism. And then we have Peggy.
Hey.
You want to do the intro, Paula?
Yep. Okay. It is my pleasure to get to introduce you to my good friend, Peggy Hack. Peggy, I don't know how many years we've known each other. I'm going to guess maybe 8.
Maybe, yeah.
It seems like we've always known each other, but I think it's probably been about 8 years. I see a lot of really friendly faces on the screen, so I know many of you are here because you know Peggy and you love Peggy already. But if you do not know Peggy, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about who she is. I just want to make sure, can everybody hear us now? Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa. So Peggy is an advocate, an activist, and a historian of all things related to the childcare workforce. Peggy retired as an early educator with 22 years of experience in family childcare and 14 years in center-based care. Other roles she's played in early education include being a staff member at WICA, So we're really proud here that we get to claim a little bit of Peggy's history. She's also been an adjunct faculty member at Madison College and continues to consult with the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment at UC Berkeley. And most proudly, she is an active member of the local Dane County Worthy Wage Campaign and coordinator, resource specialist of the National Worthy Wage Campaign, which initiated Worthy Wage Day. And this is why we're all here. And we're really excited to get to hear more about that movement. So now we are going to ask Peggy some questions, and we want to also encourage all of you to either just raise your hand or ask questions in the chat, and we will get those to Peggy as well. Jeanette also just put in the chat that Peggy was her daughter's childcare provider, and she feels like the luckiest family in the world. And I'm jealous of Jeanette for having that experience.
Okay, I can start off with the questions if you're good to go, Peggy.
I am.
All right. Can you kick us off with your reflections on the first Worthy Wage Day, and the momentum leading up to that event?
I can recall that day as exhilarating and powerful. And the reason I can conjure that image up so quickly is because there is a picture of me with my now 34-year-old daughter who in a baby carrier on my back in 1992. So I carry that picture with me all the time. It's in a video called Making News, Making History. But I think what's really important, what I really want to stress about Worthy Wage Day in 1992, the first one, that wasn't just a day that came out of somebody's good idea. That was a day that was a culmination of like nearly 2 decades of childcare teachers organizing themselves and leading a movement for better compensation. We had to learn to see ourselves as worthy not only of better pay, but of course of greater respect. And we had to develop skills like public speaking on the Capitol steps, because that was something I was not familiar with. And we really created a unity as we did that. So Worthy Wage Day, in my mind, kicked off the second phase of the compensation movement. Because up to that time, what we were really doing was we were focusing on transforming ourselves at a time when even our professional affiliations, including our own NAYC, they viewed our activities and our demands for better pay, they viewed it as unprofessional. We were not supposed to be talking about our pay. Our focus was supposed to be on the children. And we were called the radical fringe, the group who kind of lost their focus. So we had to proclaim our worthiness. And this was at a time, I have to tell you, in the 70s and the 80s, when the moniker of babysitter was really prominent. And so we felt like, this was a time to bring our message to the whole world, to say that we had to be loud, we had to be bold, and we said we want to gain a lot of attention. And so that was part of this Bringing Worthy Wage Day. One of the things I said in my first kind of public speaking role on the Capitol steps is that I believed that our great silence was as much of a barrier to us as our worthless wages. So, of course, we were trying to break that silence to the extent that we could. And, we thought if the world heard about our plight, that things would change. Not so much. But anyway, that's where we were at the time.
Thank you so much, Peggy. I'd love to hear just a little bit more about your particular decision to become a part of that movement. I have a feeling it's just part of who you are as a human. But as an educator at that moment in time, what drew you to the movement? And then also, as an educator in Wisconsin, how did Wisconsin show up at that time, at that movement?
Well, first of all, I want to say Wisconsin showed up really big time, and I'll get to that. But what
Just one
personally,
second. Julio, did you have a question? Okay, sorry.
what personally brought me to the movement was breaking my own silence about a work environment that was intolerable. And it happened to be my very first job out of college, graduating with a college degree in child development. And so I learned early on, and I hope everybody on this call learns this or has learned this already in their lifetime, that when you tell your story with passion and with a lot of heart to someone who really, really needs to hear it, then there's kind of no going back. You can't kind of go quietly back into your old way of being. And so around that same time, and so this is in the latter part of the 1970s, I found a group of people who just like to get together and talk about our work. We were called the Sunday Brunch Group. And we were all products of our time. We had either been impacted by or directly involved in the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the women's movement. So we were believing that the work we did was actually work that was changing the world. And then it happened that a member of our group, our little Sunday brunch group, about 8 to 10 people that would get together, saw an article called "Who's Minding the Children?" And we contacted the author of that article. Turned out to be somebody in Berkeley, California. And in Berkeley, California, we found out there was a group just like ours that was meeting, that was childcare teachers meeting together to talk about our work. So that kind of was the first kind of thing. And in 1981, so this was a couple years we had been kind of getting to know each other and communicating with each other. And we found a few other groups as well. 1981 was the first time that we met at an NAEYC conference in Detroit, Michigan. First time we ever met in person. And this was Ann Arbor, Michigan, folks, Berkeley, California, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Boston, Massachusetts, and Madison, Wisconsin. And soon after was Seattle, Washington joined. And we formed the NAEYC Child Care Employee Caucus. And we met every year after that, and growing our numbers and growing our strength. And by 1982, so this was just a little over a decade later, on the first Worthy Wage Day, there was Worthy Wage Day activity in 35 of the 50 states. And
Wow.
I say Wisconsin was unique in that we had a really supportive NAEYC affiliate, which was WICA. And WICA at that time had local affiliates and local affiliates all around the state. And many of those local affiliates had local worthy wage campaigns. There were campaigns in Appleton and Green Bay and Sheboygan and Chippewa Falls. So there were a lot of worthy wage campaigns. And in Madison, of course, it was Dane County AEYC. And they put almost all of their energy and their resources and their time into the Dane County Worthy Wage campaign. And then we went further and developed what they called a Worthy Wage Network. And so each affiliate designated a leader or several leaders, and we would come together in this network and learn leadership skills together, do trainings for other teachers. So we really built our leadership skills. And it turned out then that things that happened in Madison, some of the Madison groups were the most innovative, the most creative, and the most fun to be around. We did a lot of stuff. But that's why Wisconsin really, I mean, we started as a group in Madison, but we really continued throughout the whole time of being really prominent in the campaign, in the national campaign.
Thank you,
That answer
Peggy.
your question?
Yes, that was great. I was just gonna say you mentioned the feeling of making big change, and I was just going to ask you, can you share some of those key milestones in the fight for worthy wages for early educators over the past few decades?
Well, you know, sometimes, you know, people say, well, the Worthy Wage campaign didn't really work. Yeah, we still are fighting for better pay. And I appreciate everybody on this call who's doing that. So it makes talking about milestones a little hard, right? But we did do something that I think was really, really a major accomplishment. And that is that we brought this issue into the public discourse in a big way. And you know that today there's hardly a conversation about childcare where there isn't some mention of the barriers that are created by wages that aren't where they should be. So prior to that campaign, it was really only the workforce itself that was talking about wages. So just the fact that groups of teachers got together and talked about wages was a hugely significant milestone, and that we were able to build on that. You know, sometimes now I think so many people talk about childcare and talk about wages that I worry that the voices of the teachers themselves might get lost in the din, or might even get silenced. And we have to be careful not to let that happen, because we have the real experience. We are the real experts in this movement. If I'm looking at milestones, you know, certainly one of the milestones was the first national research study that linked quality care to the quality of a work environment. And that was called the National Child Care Staffing Study in 1988. So prior to the Worthy Wage campaign, that happened. But following on the heels of that was a lot of the brain development research. And of course, we already knew this stuff. We already knew how, you know, we already knew that we were improving children's brains. We already knew that our work environment impacted the quality of the work we did. But the data was really important at that time. It allowed us to kind of interject that into the public discourse, right? So I think those were huge things. I think another milestone was Worthy Wage Day itself. When we did the first one, we didn't really know if it would take off the way it did. And it really, really did take off, and it was really meaningful. And in the subsequent years, people closed their programs for Worthy Wage Day. We did training for each other. We did rallies. But we made that a day of, that didn't define the campaign. I mean, the movement for compensation was going on all the time, but it gave a focus every year to what we did. And so I think that was a huge milestone in itself. It was so important and so refreshing and so wonderful for me to see the recent rally that happened in Madison, and to be able to go there and shout with everybody, because it was reminiscent for me so much of the old Worthy Wage days. But milestones, the whole word can be kind of hard, because it kind of implies that we're moving forward. And sometimes we look and we say, gosh, are we really moving forward, or are we slipping backwards? It's a scary thing. But I know that one thing we have all learned is persistence. And sometimes we just need to stop and say, well, look where we are. look where we used to be. We've got a ways to go, but we carry on. So that's how I think about milestones.
Yeah, I think it's a slow movement, but I think it's still moving in the right direction, and I hope it continues to stay that way. And I think what you were saying about like having this annual day is as much about all of the people that are doing the hard work as it is about the actual like advocacy of that day. Because we do need those moments where we can all just be together in solidarity, and that sort of like fuels the next year, which we know is going to be just as difficult. But Ruth, I know you're ready to get in here and reflect on all of these things. But Peggy, I want to thank you for, I just want to take this one quick second to say, well, thank you for all of that fight you gave up until this point. And thank you also for being at Advocacy Day. It was really powerful to have you there.
I just want to pose a question, Peggy. Actually, probably two questions. One is, in those early days, when all of these amazing people were coming together across 30 plus states and having discussions about the need for worthy wages, can you just talk a little bit about where they pointed to the solution, what they saw as the solution? And then also, if you could maybe, and I don't think you talked about it, but I think maybe people would want to know the start of CCW and the work you did there, and just if there's anything you want to add about that.
So you asked me to talk about CCW and to talk about what we saw as solutions,
Yes.
right? Well, so I think that we thought about a lot of things. Like I said, the first thing was really transforming ourselves and redefining who we were as a profession. That was kind of the early kind of stuff we do. But we went into a lot of stuff about unionization. I think it took time to realize what is widely accepted today, and that was really part of that slogan that we used to use a lot of: teachers can't afford, parents can't afford to pay, teachers can't afford to stay, help us find a better way. I think what we came to learn is that public investment was actually the crucial thing. You know, it became clearer as we explored unionization, because we really were, all of these worthy wage groups were really pushing the envelope on parent fees. But we realized that that was not going to be a solution in and of itself. And so, you know, it took some time. I mean, and unionization did some good things. And most of us didn't unionize, but it was a time where we talked about our power to have power within our workplace to kind of push things there. And kind of out of that came things like model work standards and things like that. But we did realize that we had to call for public policy to improve a broken childcare system more than anything else. So I think that that was a kind of gradual over time kind of recognition of that was where the solution lies. In terms of CCW, you know, the Berkeley group morphed into, first it was called the East Bay Area Child Care Workers. And in Madison, we called ourselves the Madison Area Child Care Workers United. So all these little groups had names, and we tried to pick names that sounded really powerful. And then as CCW, as is the East Bay, became our place that became our kind of hub for communication. they changed their name to the Child Care Employee Project. And they were in the Child Care Employee Project through the 80s up until close to the Worthy Wage campaign. It was around that time, but there was a recognition that, first of all, child care employees kind of indicated just teachers in center-based programs. And we were learning about being more inclusive. And we were learning that family childcare was a really critical part of this. 1991 is when I started doing family childcare. So, so they changed their name, and we decided that that was around that time. It was kind of after several Worthy Wage days, I think, that it was like we are a national movement, and we have to have a national presence. So they moved to opened a national office in DC, and then changed their name to the Center for the Child Care Workforce. And at first I was on the board of the Center for the Child Care Workforce. Actually, at first I was on the board of CCEP, the Child Care Employee Project. And as the campaign gained more momentum, I joined the staff. And I was on staff from 1997 to 2002, when the campaign ended. It was a 10-year campaign, first envisioned to be a 5-year campaign. Is that good?
It was super helpful, Peggy. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like I could just sit here and have like a coffee table chat with you, because these issues are so still present and pressing and overlooked and all of those things. And you've pointed to where you see sort of the roots of much of that. And you began by pointing to redefining ourselves in this work, and standing up as professionals and speaking as professionals and demanding investments as professionals and all of this. Mm-hmm. And from where I think we are now, I feel like a lot of that has happened. I think a lot of that has happened. I think you talk to a lot of people in childcare now, in early education, who really see themselves in that space. And I think I
really hope there's nobody who questions their professionalism, and nobody questions the value of our work.
Right. And I think that's true in terms of ourselves. Clearly, I think people still value the question or question the value of our work. And I am curious. I know we all probably have in our heads what we think that is about. And you could say it's about the fact that you can't fix childcare without putting a ton of money into it. Is it gender? Is it other forms of inclusion that are being overlooked in terms of what children and families and communities across our nation need? And what is it that still leaves us in this space after 34 years of not yet crossing that line in Wisconsin? I'm going to say in Wisconsin because I think some other states are getting more deep into investments. And I want to turn that over to you and just kind of hear your own reflections on that.
What keeps us there? Boy, I really, I think it's a whole bunch of different things. I still think it is the gender issue. I still think it is the divisive issue. I think there's a societal, it's a cultural issue. We have, and I used to talk about this a lot, and maybe it's just something that's still present, that there's a culture within early childhood people of being really nice people, really being get along people. Sometimes we have to we have to say, no, that's not all of who we are. We're also the badass people that we have to that we have to kind of proclaim sometimes. So I think there's things about our society. There's things about how we are just the capitalist system that says, children right now don't produce a profit of any kind for anybody. They don't produce anything that contributes to our society until they're older. And we're a short-sighted society. I mean, we're not looking at the long term like the indigenous people looking 7 generations into the future, right? So I think there's just lots of things working against the work of children, and we have to just keep holding it up and saying how important it is and how valuable it is. But I don't have a good answer, really, to why. I think it's just many different things.
Peggy, Lisa Getz, who runs an after-school program in Oregon. Lisa, is that still your role?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Lisa.
Hello, Peggy.
Lisa, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, Peggy, I've known you for years and so forth,
Yeah.
and I have run large centers and so forth like that. And the biggest thing is I just put on there, who are we missing for these stakeholders? A lot of times it is our board members who, it's you know what, it's we have really told them the importance of childcare, and we tell our families that. But it is just who other can we help in this investment? I mean, I remember years ago when I was with a nonprofit organization, CDI, and we had the city that really talked for us. That was great. That was one that came from Worthy Wage. That came from all of us asking for others. What else can we do to show everybody in general in our state, as well as walking up the Capitol steps and saying, we demand a better wage. And we've been doing this, such as communication and advocacy and so forth, for such a long period of time. And in years past, I mean, they've tried to have some of us as child care centers be able to blend in with an organization to help their families who have children and so forth. That's great. But when you're a small little community, that isn't always the best solution for us. And we come around to this round table so many times of, who are we missing? What else are we missing? And I mean, my board members would say, I couldn't go to that Worthy Wage. They're just like, you're not walking up the Capitol. You're not doing up other things. You have to do things behind the scenes. So we're trying to really educate our own families and being that advocate for all of our staff members too. And the word, babysitting, just drives me nuts, as well as daycare, because we don't provide care for days. We take care of children, youths, our future leaders. We can go on and on. But the big thing that we just what are we still missing is, we're walking and talking, and who's listening? I mean, Governor Evers is saying that this is the year of the kids. I'm so happy those words came out, and literally I'm not a cheerleader, but I was just like doing cartwheels going, this is awesome. And having our representatives and so forth and come and see our childcare centers and hear our stories, those are huge things. And when I told the families that Representative Jacobson was going to come, Janet Jacobson and so forth, they're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So again, those small little things really do mean a huge voice for us. And hopefully that, we're keep on, we revamp, we retool and so forth to make sure that all of us are heard. So thank you, Peggy. Keep on going.
One of the questions that was posed to me is, how can local communities, and I think that's where you're getting at, how can they support, this fight for worthy wages? And I think that communities, community leaders, business people in the community, the families in the community, I think communities will support us when they really understand that their fight is our fight, or our fight is their fight. You know, the desire to build strong
Yeah,
communities
yeah,
where young
fine.
people
Yep.
want to
I just,
stay,
is
where
there
they
a way
want to
to, I
raise,
mean, are
where
you
they
guys
want to
looking at setting up where I can just do that automatically and stuff?
pardon?
I think there is a separate conversation going on.
Oh, okay. I was just saying that when a community says they want young people to stay and to work in their communities and to raise their families in their communities, then that is the fight for a child care system that sustains a workforce and provides quality care. When a local economy says, we want everybody here to thrive, I think we have to say this is the fight for a child care system that supports its workforce and provides quality care. So it's kind of like community. I think we, as much as we can, we have to take opportunities to, no matter what the local issue is that we're talking about, to ask our community leaders to ask what is the impact of any decision that we make in the community. What is the impact of this decision on children and those who take care of them? And ask them to act accordingly. But I think that, being there, constantly asking that question and bringing it up in spaces that we didn't think about bringing it up in the past. But now we can say, our fight is your fight, and we have to do this together. That's how I look at the stakeholders are everybody.
Thank you.
And we start by talking to the people in our local communities, I think.
Vicki, I want to explore just a little bit with you. So how we get children, childcare, young children, infants and toddlers out of a political game and into an actual sort of policy investment discussion across our country, right? Nationally and in states. And I think local communities are already there trying to do these things, right? And what I mean by this is, I believe there's a lot of people who are policymakers, lawmakers, business leaders, who believe there are cheap solutions to this, who believe there are ways where we don't have to pay a lot more to get ongoing care for our kids, and are more than willing to take advantage of that system. And I think a little bit about our K-12 system. And at some point, we made this decision as a country that we were going to invest in educating children, right? And the discussion on that now becomes one of vouchers, charter schools, religious schools, private schools, and can we use taxpayer dollars over there? With childcare, we're still way back here, right? In terms of we're not even at the place of seeing that an investment is needed, right? And there's this, and I think you and I have had this discussion over the years, right? There's kind of soft pedaling what we think the solution is, and behaving ourselves and doing it in appropriate ways. And then there's the hard sell. There's the close your doors for a day. There's the, marches and hell raising in this industry to stand up for themselves, right? What gives you hope? If you have some, what gives you hope in terms of seeing this change in trajectory about understanding that children are not a temporary thing, that they must have a public investment to ensure that they are adequately and appropriately supported and loved and nurtured in those early years?
Oh, gosh. So sometimes I say to myself, I'm glad I don't do the work anymore because I think it's hard. I know it's hard. And I know that it's absolutely critical that people keep hope, right? because we wouldn't keep fighting. So a little bit is understanding our history is one of the things that gives me hope, to be really honest. And, our history says that there was a time that kids as young as 2 were considered part of the education system. We don't really know that, but kindergarten, still in Germany, kindergarten is preschool age children as well. And it was a fight to get kindergarten, as we know it today, into the public school system. So part of it is these fights take a long time. I don't want to say that to let people give up hope. I think anybody knows when you're in a struggle this big, that you have to be in it for the long haul. But I think change comes from a lot of different places. It gives me hope that people are continuing to talk about it. We don't give up. We are persistent. That gives me hope. We have to tackle it from different places. Like we have to be okay with some people being loud and boisterous and some people working behind the scenes, that we're not all going to work the same way. But we'll have to kind of build a kind of collective idea about who we are, that we are strong people who are willing to do hard things to make change happen. I mean, it does all sound kind of pandering, but they really are what I believe. I believe this is just, it's going to be hard. And the people that to me, the people that think I'm okay with the way it is right now, probably have more resources than other people, probably have more influence in their lives maybe than other people. But I think most people understand, and we just don't know how to, it's kind of like getting it through the skulls of some of these legislators that is impeding us. I keep thinking that there's hope in youth. There's hope in young people, and I don't know what else to say. Somebody else say, what gives you hope? I don't know. I'd like to hear everybody on this call to say, what is it that gives you hope? Because we got to stay. One of the challenges that was a challenge in 1976, that's still a challenge today, is retaining people, retaining spirit, retaining heart, retaining, this retention issue it's big. It's like, how do we stay in it for the long haul? That's all I'm going to say. You might have a better answer for that, Ruth,
Peggy,
about what gives you hope.
I'm wondering about, this sort of feeling of relying on the next generation of advocates. And I want to hear from you what advice you have for them, knowing this, I kind of like really hate this analogy, but like this is a marathon, right? It's a really long,
That's
like
a
the
really
longest
long.
marathon in the world. And so what advice do you have for people who are just getting their toes wet in advocacy, that are in all of these different roles? Like Lisa said, her board didn't want her marching up to the Capitol steps. There are people who didn't know that there was this fight for wages happening, that are just coming into this space.
Mm-hmm. Well, one bit of advice I would give is to dig into your history a little bit. I do want to give a plug for Echoes. I'll wait for later, but if we understand that we are standing on the shoulders of people who stood strong in the past, who fought for injustice, that's an important thing. I think another thing I'd say as a word of advice is, don't underestimate the power of building community with like-minded people. find your people who feel like you feel and who you can talk to. You know, fighting change is hard, but it's a lot easier if you do it with other people. And it's also a lot more fun if you do it with other people. And, you know, I think even though now we have a lot of tools afforded to us by technology, that there's still no replacement for in-person relationships with people. So really, like, finding your people is really important. I think another thing that I'd advise people to do, and it's kind of getting back to it being more fun, you know, we know joy because our work teaches us joy, I think. I knew a lot of joy when I did childcare. I mean, I also knew grief and I knew sadness and disappointment, but I knew joy like some people don't ever get to know joy in their work life. And I think we have to infuse that in things that we do. And to keep that kind of in the forefront. It's interesting because you know, back in the day, we'd do stuff like we'd make stuffed baby dolls that would hold our signs so we could be present in lots of different places. We did a lot of fun stuff like that. And we used to call it using the tools of our trade. And one of the tools of our trade is finding the joy, finding the playfulness. It is absolutely true that it is more than what we get paid that keeps us in our work, right? I mean, if we only kept in our work because of what we were paid, there would be no childcare. But there are these really these really things that are just built into the work itself. So touch base with that as much as you can and build joy. That's what I would say to young people getting in.
I feel like you're doing a really great job answering all these questions because Ruth is asking all these really great questions. So, I mean, I can ask one of the other ones we had, or if there's something really specific
Sure.
that you
No,
wanted
you
to
know,
share, Peggy.
What did you say?
I said if there, I know that I think most of these questions have been answered throughout already, but if there's anything specific from your
Well,
responses.
I do want to say, you asked one of the questions that was about challenges.
Hmm.
And what are some of the challenges faced by advocates then and now? And I think that it's important to recognize that there are some big differences. For one thing, I can't even believe that we did what we did without technology. I mean, honest to God, we had to communicate through the US postal system and paid long distance calling. But the biggest challenge at that time really was redefining ourselves in a world that defined us very differently. And I think that I hope that that's much improved. But our early movement was also largely populated by well-educated white women, right? And we had to learn over time to become more committed, more intentional of building a more diverse movement. And I think today's advocates need to keep that art of inclusivity, because we need a whole lot of different kinds of voices. And I reflected on movements impacted us, and there are movements today that can, that we can learn from. The movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, the immigrant rights movement, the movement for preserving democracy. Those things, I think we should all be paying attention to them, and what's working for them and what's not working for them. But we learn by how we observe the world. But I want to say, childcare, the work of it is, the essence of the work is the same, but the work, there's a lot of things that are really different. And I just want to recognize that today the work is, even though if you go and kind of look at inflation, wages haven't changed all that much. But even despite that, the work is more demanding today, has more responsibility, more expectations put on it by people around us, more calls for accountability than we ever had. I mean, I don't know. So we had some more luxury of time, I think, to organize in the way we did, to bring people together. That is a real problem, and it's a real big challenge. And for all of you who are fighting to make the time, to find the time, I just want to say thank you, because I know that that's hard. And I watched the work change and evolve into, I guess, what somebody would consider more professional, having more of these professional guidelines. But it's also made the work, I mean, the professional wages haven't kept up with it. I think back in the day, people would say, well, and this is what NAYC said, I'm talking in the 80s. NAYC would say to us, well, if you just did your job really, really good, then better pay would come along. And that is not the case. And we were doing a good job then. So I think this effort to keep making us be better, to making our programs be better, for that to be so much of a focus, when really we have to say, we need a better system of childcare. So I just want to acknowledge, the challenges today they're different. And so different strategies, different tactics, different uses of technology are going to have to be really, you all got to figure that out in the next phase of the compensation movement. But I want to recognize that as a huge challenge.
Thank you, Peggy. I was going to leave it open, but I did see Kelly Matthews raise her hand if we want to get one more question in from the audience. Kelly, if you're
Sure.
still on.
Hey,
Sure.
Peggy, I was curious how you see the intersection of the Worthy Wage campaign and the model early learning standards that you worked on.
Oh, gosh. The model work standards.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, so they're different than the model, but the model work standards really came out of the work in the early 80s around unionization and around, we did this fabulous work in Dane County AEYC, and actually we spread it around to all the affiliates of doing this work around developing model personnel policies, we called them, because we wanted to define the work, because what we realized that parallel to asking for worthy wages is that might be a long-term thing, but we could do some things right now to make things better for people. And if we did things right now for people to make their work environments better, that it might keep them in the field to be working for the long haul of doing the worthy wage stuff. So really the model work standards were an outgrowth of those activities. We had kind of talked about model union contract language, model personnel policies. And when it came to the Worthy Wage campaign, we were still kind of these parallel paths of improving the work environment and improving the compensation of people. And those standards didn't come out of a bunch of people in supportive agencies or legislative bodies or anything defining those standards. They came out of a campaign to say to people, what is it, in addition to worthy wages, what is it that you really need? And so those model work standards were really what the teachers and the family child care providers defined as this is what our work should look like. And they weren't ever meant to be pie in the sky things, although people thought that. They were really just, this is what people in this field need and deserve.
Peggy, thank you so much for being here. I feel like a lot of us would love to just stay on this call all day. There's so many different things that we could discuss about childcare systems, structures, and what educators deserve and where we're at. But we are so grateful to get to spend time with you on this really, really important day. We have recorded this session. We will make it widely available to folks who've missed it. But on behalf of all of us here at WICA, we just have so much gratitude for your continued work and your time with us today. Thank you, Peggy.
Can I please just do a little plug for Echoes, the project I've been working on?
I put a link in the chat too.
Yeah, that's going to be in the chat.
I put it in there. Yeah.
Oh, great. So since I have retired from my position as a childcare provider and then my position as a WICA employee, I've been working on this history project with the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment. It's called the Echoes. And, you know, if I live long enough, and you probably get a sense that I'm kind of old because I kind of am, but if I live long enough, I want to see this be part of early childhood curriculum, part of our professional preparation to prepare us to be advocates. And so I just want to encourage you to check out Echoes. There's a lot of stuff on there. And I worked on a lot of the stuff of 1970 to 2000. But even before that, we have history, and our history is a proud one. And we're making history every day. Everything you're doing right now is going to be somebody else's history. So we want what we do today, you know, so people look back on it and say, wow, they did some great stuff.
Great.
So thank you for letting me talk, and please check out Echoes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peggy.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think I can just end it probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.